Massachusetts, a state renowned for its cobblestone streets, revolution, and picture-perfect charm. However, underneath, something ancient waits beneath the surface, behind a lovely slopes and white churches. Forgotten rooms, murmuring stones, old alignments that are inexplicable. These aren't your typical legends from the road. These are mysteries, written in shadows and chiseled in bedrock. Night, Westford evening. Ron in the sleepy Massachusetts town of Westford, tucked down close to a quiet suburban road. There is something strange, something inappropriate. It isn't ostentatious or dramatic. It doesn't require notice. It is simply present. A weathered granite fragment that is partially covered in moss and vegetation. It's really simple to miss unless you're actively looking for it. However, if you search, you might discover something that challenges your understanding of American history. Residents refer to place as the Westford Night. It doesn't seem like much at first. It was only a faint outline on a rock. It might be a dude, with a sword in hand. It might just be scratches. However, to an increasing number of inquisitive thinkers, scholars, and adventurers, for non-professional historians, it might be much more. They think it's a carved representation of a medieval warrior, perhaps centuries before Columbus ever set foot near the Atlantic, in a solid New England stone. Now, imagine that for a moment. In Massachusetts, a knight in armor with a sword in hand. Not in a painting, nor in fact. The terrain itself is carved into a storybook. Legend has it that this engraving commemorates Sir James's burial. Gunn was a Scottish knight who accompanied Prince Henry Sinclair on his voyage. Indeed, Prince Henry Sinclair was traveling in stealth to the late 1300s in North America. There's a fantastic rumor that Sinclair, the Earl of Orkney, traveled across the Atlantic for a long time, interacted with indigenous peoples in New England and Nova Scotia prior to Columbus, and buried one of his troops here, leaving a stone monument in its place. Let's first examine the carving itself before delving into theories. The knight is located off depot on a slope. It's not behind glass or at a museum. No security or ropes are present on cameras. It's simply outside, vulnerable to the elements, the seasons, and anybody who happens to come upon it. Initially, it appears like a random gouge. But if you stare at it long enough, shapes begin to appear at a helmet, a sword, an arm, a shield. Some say you can even spot a symbol. Asta-shaped crest said to belong to the Gunn clan. No one knows exactly when the carving was first found. People in town knew about it in the 1800s, but it didn't really grab attention until the 1950s. That's when a man named Frank Glenn, an amateur historian, started spreading the story. He believed this was proof of Prince Henry Sinclair's journey to the New World, a full 100 years before Columbus. According to the theory, Sinclair and a fleet of North Scottish ships landed in what's now Nova Scotia around 1398. From there, they followed the coast south, possibly reaching Massachusetts. Somewhere along the way, Sir James Gunn died, and his fellow travelers carved this memorial into the rock. Now, this idea directly challenges the history we're taught. Sure, textbooks sometimes mention Leif Erikson reaching Newfoundland around the year 1000, but after that, it jumps to Columbus in 1492. What if other voyages happened? Quiet, undocumented, and forgotten by mainstream history. That's why the Westford Night has so many people talking. Of course, not everyone buys the story. Some experts say the carving is just a natural formation, just the result of centuries of wind, rain, and freezing temperatures cracking the rock. Others think it might have been added later, maybe by people in the 1800s who wanted to create a cool local legend. After all, there was a big trend back then of trying to make New England feel older, more mysterious. But even if we agree it was carved by hand, who made it and when? Supporters of the night theory say there are too many details for it to be random. They point to the shape of the sword, the armor, even the supposed crest, and compare it to real 14th century knight designs. Some have even laid images of medieval weapons over the carving to show how well they match. And then there's the bigger picture. The Westford Night isn't the only strange artifact in New England. There are stone chambers, carvings, and mysterious patterns scattered across the region, many with unknown origins. Some believe they're all connected, part of an ancient map or lost story that's been hiding in plain sight. Even wilder theories link the night to the legendary Knights Templar. According to this idea, Sinclair had ties to the Templars and brought their secrets, maybe even treasures, to the New World long before the age of European exploration officially began. Whether that sounds exciting or ridiculous probably depends on how open you are to rewriting the past. But here's the thing that sticks with people. It's not just about the facts, it's the feeling. People who visit the site talk about something strange in the air. Not creepy, not haunted, just different. Like the place remembers something, like the stone is holding on to a secret. And despite the skepticism, the debate hasn't stopped. New photos keep getting taken. Scans are done. Historians and hobbyists argue in books, blogs, and documentaries. Everyone has a theory. Noon agrees. Yet, the night stays right where it is. Today, there's a small plaque marking the spot. The carving is worn down, weathered by time, debate, and erosion, but it's still visible. Locals keep the area trimmed. Teachers bring kids here on field trips. And once in a while, a curious traveler shows up, hears the story, and sees something they can't explain. Is it a grave, a hoax, or a clue to a lost chapter in human history? Westford isn't saying. In the stone, it doesn't talk. It just waits. The Bourne Stone, the Bourne Stone. In the quiet coastal town of Bourne, Massachusetts, right where the Cape Cod Canal slices through layers of history and old maritime legend, there's a strange slab of stone hiding in plain sight. It's not buried in the woods, not locked away in a vault. You'll find it behind glass inside a small local museum, sitting calmly as if it knows something the rest of us missed. They call it the Bourne Stone. At first glance, it just looks like a chunk of granite, about 3 feet wide, 2 feet tall, gray, weathered, uneven. But take a step closer and you'll see it. An odd rectangular panel carved into the face off the stone. Inside that panel are strange markings, symbols, letters, maybe even a message left behind by someone no one can name. And the real mystery isn't just what it says. It's who carved it, why, and how long ago. Let's rewind a bit. The first known mention of the Bourne Stone goes all the way back to the 1600s. But back then, nobody treated it like a relic. It was literally used as part of the foundation for a trading post. Just imagine that. Someone saw this carved, mysterious slab and thought, that'll make a good wall. It was buried under floorboards, mostly forgotten, but it stayed. And when the building changed hands, when centuries passed, the stone never left. Eventually, someone noticed, and people started asking questions. That was when things got strange, because no one, not historians, not archaeologists, could say for sure what the carvings meant. The symbols etched into the panel looked deliberate, but they didn't match any known language. Some characters looked like Roman letters. Others resembled ancient runes. Some didn't look like anything we've ever seen. Naturally, theories exploded. Some thought the markings were Native American. Others claimed they were Portuguese. A few even floated wild ideas about Phoenicians or Norse explorers. Was it a gravestone, a border marker, a message to someone who never came? One of the most talked about theories links the stone to Portuguese explorer Miguel Corte Real, who vanished in 1502. According to this idea, Corte Real or his men reached the New England coast and left behind this carved stone. Possibly to mark their presence, the supporters point to one symbol that resembles the cross used by Portuguese navigators, especially those connected to the Knights of Christ. That same cross was often etched into their ships during the Age of Discovery. But that's not the only theory floating around. Some believe the Bourne Nest is even older, left by Norse explorers who sailed past Newfoundland and made it all the way down to Cape Cod. They say the markings resemble Viking runes, the kind found in Greenland and Iceland. And if Norse ruins really exist at Lono Meadows in Canada, it's not such a stretch to imagine their ships hugging the coastline a little farther south and carving this as a marker, a message, or a monument. And then come the theories that go even deeper into the past. Some researchers think the markings might beta work of ancient Mediterranean traders, Maybe even the Phoenicians who crossed the Atlantic thousands of years ago. Far-fetched maybe, but when it comes to the born stone, nothing gets ruled out completely. Even the shape of the carving is part of the mystery. That rectangular panel, it's oddly precise. Clean edges, straight lines, almost machined. Too perfect to be random. Too intentional to be dismissed as simple graffiti. It doesn't feel like an accident. Whoever carved it took time, measured it, planned it, and clearly wanted it to last. And centuries later, it still has. Experts have tried for years to decipher it. Linguists, codireekers, historians, but no one can agree on a translation. Some say parts of the stone were altered or faked during colonial times, but there's no solid proof of that. So, here it sits, a stone that refuses to talk. Today, it's become a quiet legend in the town of Bourne. Locals know about it. Some talk about it over coffee. Tour guides bring it up now and then, but beyond that, not much. It's not famous, not viral, just waiting. A possible clue to an ancient chapter of history. And it's gathering dust behind glass. If you visit the Bourne Historical Society, you can see it for yourself. The stone is right there, preserved and on display. It doesn't move, doesn't glow, doesn't whisper, but people say they feel something when they stand in front of it. An odd energy, a strange silence, as if they're being watched by something ancient. Some describe it as déjà vu, like they almost recognize the symbols, like the message is right there, just out of reach. And still the question lingers, who carved this and why? If it really was cordial, then Portuguese explorers made it here decades before the Pilgrims ever set sail. If it was the Norse, then Cape Cod might have once been part of an old Viking route. And if it wasn't either of them, if it was someone we haven't even considered yet, then our entire understanding of early exploration might need rewriting. The Bourne stone doesn't answer any of that. It just sits there, heavy, silent, waiting. Meanwhile, the town of Bourne moves on. Boats drift along the canal. Families ride bikes past the historical building, not even knowing what's inside. But those who do know, they keep coming back. They keep asking the same question. And every now and then, someone new steps through the door and starts wondering too. Profile rock, profile rock. They say the land remembers that some places don't just hold stories in the trees or rivers, but in the stone itself. Not carved by chisel or hammer, but shaped slowly, patiently by time. That's exactly what you find deep in southeastern Massachusetts, hidden inside Freetown State Forest. A massive silent face in the rock, watching, waiting. Locals call it profile rock. This isn't some tiny relic behind a fence or locked away in a museum. Profile rock rises straight from the landscape, nearly 50 foot tall, towering, weathered, and still from just the right angle. You see it clearly. A perfect profile. A strong forehead, straight nose, lips tight like they're holding a thought. It looks less like erosion and more like a moment frozen in stone. But this isn't just any face. For generations, the Wampanoag people, the original stewards of this land, believed the rock showed the image of Massasoit Usamaquin, the great Sahim of the Poconet tribe. And according to their legend, it wasn't a coincidence. This rock was sacred, a place of spirit and story, a place where the veil between this world and the next was just a little thinner. And even now, surrounded by roads, smartphones, and the noise off modern life, Profile rock still refuses to fade away. The forest around it has a reputation. Freetown State Forest isn't just any patch of woods. It's one of the most mysterious and paranormally active spots in the state. People speak of floating lights, sudden cold winds, strange voices that seem to whisper out of nowhere. Some say they've gotten lost on trails they've walked for years. Others talk about symbols scratched into trees, markings that no one admits to making. And in the middle of all that stands a stone face, silent, watching to here's where it gets strange. Some visitors claim the face has changed over time. Not dramatically, not like an Amo vibe, but subtly. The eyes seem deeper, the mouth a little tighter, the angle of the head ever so slightly different. Photos taken at different times in different light seem to show small shifts, as if the rock is alive, responding, feeling, and maybe it is. Wampanoag elders say Profile rock was once used for spiritual visions. a place to speak with ancestors, a sacred site where prayers were offered and guidance was received. Not superstition, not fantasy, just another way of being in touch with the unseen. But not everyone has treated it with respect. In 2019, someone spray painted across the face marking over the centuries-old surface with graffiti. A crude, thoughtless act against something deeply sacred. The damage sparked outrage, not just for native communities, but from people across the region, hikers, historians, locals, even skeptics. Because even if you don't believe in legends, there's something wrong about disrespecting the unknown. Efforts were made to clean the stone, to preserve it. But it wasn't the first time profile rock had been hurt. Illegal dumping in the forest, off-roading, even rumors of strange rituals at night. Many believe all this disruption has stirred something up, that messing with the balance here might have awakened energies better left alone. And still the face remains more than a natural landmark. It's a symbol of survival, a marker of indigenous history that stretches far beyond written records. The Wanuag didn't need science to tell them this place had power. They knew. And if you visit today, whether you come out of curiosity or reverence, you'll feel it too. That shift in the air, that pause in your thoughts, the weight of something watching. Some researchers believe Profile Rock is part of a larger network of sacred sites. Places linked by ancient energy aligned in ways that modern science still can't explain. Lines of force, sacred geometry, thin places as they're sometimes called, where the worlds brush up against each other and Profile Rock. It might be the heart of that web. Others take a different approach. They say the face wasn't formed by nature alone, that at some point thousands of years ago, it was shaped not by colonists, not even Bino native tribes, but by something older, a forgotten culture, a lost people who left behind no ruins, no writings, just stone. The face, they say, is too clean, too perfect, too intentional to be an accident. And if that's true, then who carved it? And what were they trying to say? You see, the question isn't just how the face got here. It's why it still stands. This stone has endured centuries. It survived storms, wars, even vandalism. And still, it holds on, watching, waiting. You can't feel it when you step into the clearing. Something old, something vast. You don't have to believe in ghosts to feel it. You just have to stand still. Today, Profile Rock is still accessible. There are signs, parking spots, patrols to prevent damage. But once you step off the pavement and into the forest, the world changes. The air thickens. The trees grow quiet. And then just through the branches, you see it. A face cast in granite, Massasoid, or maybe something older. People still talk. They whisper about the lights, the sounds, the feeling you get when you stand too close for too long. Something ancient stirs here. Something scarred but not gone. In a world obsessed with facts, Profile Rock remains an unsolved riddle. And it's not trying to explain itself. It just waits. The lost Norbega, the lost Normga. Sometimes a map tells you more than a history book ever could. Not in facts or footnotes, but in mystery. Rivers that don't exist. Cities that never were. Names whispered across oceans by sailors chasing the shimmer of something just out of reach. And at the edge of one such map, sketched by early explorers who thought they were outlining the edge of a new world, sits one word, Normga, a city of gold, towers of stone. Great wealth tucked deep in the forests of the New World. Some said it stood near the Penobscot River in Maine. Others swore it was closer to the Charles River in Massachusetts. But here's the strange part. No one's ever found it. No ruins, no treasure, not even a single undeniable brick. And yet, Normga refuses to be forgotten. The story starts back in the 1500s when European explorers first began mapping the northeastern coast of North America. Their reports were messy, sometimes based on what they saw, sometimes on rumors, and often on pure guesswork. Still, over and over again, they mentioned a place larger, wealthier, more mysterious than any settlement they'd seen. They called it Norbega, a word that may have been misheard from native languages or perhaps passed down from even older seafaring legends. On those old maps, Norbega wasn't just a town. It was an empire. You'll find it drawn in ink with spires and domes, and sometimes a tiny king sitting on a throne. The location moves from one map to another, but the idea sticks. A powerful hidden city somewhere in the northeast. The details never lined up. Explorers couldn't agree on where it was, or even what it was. A French navigator, Jean Alphonse, claimed he passed it in the mid-1500s. He described stone buildings and lively trade. Others said it was a native settlement with unusually advanced construction. English explorers latched onto the tale, convinced that somewhere in the wilderness, Norvega waited with stories perhaps of ancient European contact buried in its roots. But here's where it gets weird. This wasn't just a one-off mistake. Normga kept showing up long after real cities like Boston and Plymouth appeared on the map. Normga was still there, still drawn, still labeled like a ghost no one could quite erase. And that got people wondering, what if it wasn't just a myth? Let's take a step back. Imagine long before Columbus, even before the Vikings, someone else reached these shores. Not in wooden cabins or temporary camps, but with stone, with trade, with something more permanent. Maybe they stayed for a generation, maybe just a season. And when they left, the city faded, but not completely. Maybe Normga was the last trace off whoever they were. Some believe it was the BAS who were fishing these waters before most Europeans had even heard of the New World. Others think it was Norse explorers who traveled inland from Newfoundland, building a short-lived outpost. And then there are the more speculative thinkers. Those who tie Normga to an ancient seafaring civilization, something older than any of our recorded histories, something Atlantis-like. Sound far-fetched, maybe, but consider this. Why did Normga appear on so many maps? Why did so many explorers say they'd heard about it from local tribes? And why has no one, after centuries of searching, been able to disprove its existence? Now, we come to Massachusetts. In the 1800s, a Harvard professor named Eben Norton Horford became obsessed with Normga. He wasn't just a curious academic. He believed he found it, poring over maps, journals, and legends. He zeroed in on the Charles River right near present-day Weston and Newton. He declared this was it, Normga. But he didn't stop there. Horsford believed Leif Erikson had sailed up the Charles, establishing a Norse colony that later became the source of the Normga legend. He even built a stone tower and placed a monument near the river, marking it as Leif's house. To this day, those markers still stand. Most historians dismissed him. They said it was wishful thinking that Horford had let legend cloud his logic, but he never backed down. And some people quietly think he might have been onto something. Here's where things get even more interesting. Normga exists on dozens of maps. It's described in detail by multiple explorers. But there's no physical proof, no city ruins, no golden walls. It's a legend made entirely of lines on parchment. And yet, it still feels like it almost could have been real. Maybe it was never a grand city of gold. Maybe it was smaller, a gathering place, a trade hub, a settlement that came and went, quietly absorbed by the forest. After all, not all civilizations fall with fire and glory. Some just fade. And in a region like New England, where forests reclaim trails and time wears away stone faster than memory, it's not impossible that something once stood and simply disappeared. Now for the twist. Today, the Charles River winds through calm neighborhoods. Weston, Newton, the kind of towns where people walk dogs and mow lawns. But if you follow the riverbank, especially near where Horsford built his markers, you might spot odd stone structures, moss-covered, out of place, no signs, no explanations, just shapes, just hints. Some believe ancient chambers are buried near the river. Others talk about strange markings found on old stones seen only by those who know where to look. And occasionally, someone reports finding an object that doesn't quite belong, out of place, out of time. Is Normga real? Maybe not the way those old maps imagined it. Maybe there were no towers, no palaces, no golden roads. But maybe, just maybe it was something, a piece of a forgotten timeline, a flicker of a story we never fully recorded. And maybe that's the point. Not every mystery needs to be solved. Some are meant to make us look deeper, to pay attention, to wonder, Today, the towns of Weston and Newton live quiet modern lives. But if you walk along the river, where the trees bend low and the air grows still, the name still whispers. Normga, a city built from memory, imagined by many, forgotten be none the Upton Chamber. In the quiet town of Upton, Massachusetts, past white picket fences and winding colonial roads, there's a hill. And buried beneath that hill is something strange, something old, something that doesn't quite fit the world built around it. They call it the Upton Chamber. At first glance, it looks like nothing. Just a small stone opening in a grassy slope. The kind of thing you'd expect to be an old root cellar. But step closer, duck your head, walk through that narrow entrance, and everything changes. Inside, the passage leads to a round chamber built entirely of stone. No mortar, no modern tools, just massive granite slabs perfectly stacked, forming a corbel dome that's been holding itself together for centuries, maybe longer. And in that moment, you feel it. Not just the cool air or the quiet, but something deeper, something older, as if you've stepped into a place that remembers. The first question anyone asks is simple. Who built this? The honest answer? No one really knows. Some say it was early colonists, maybe in the 1600s, used for stirring food or ice, but stand inside that stone room for just a minute, and that idea starts to fall apart. Colonial farmers didn't build like this, especially not underground. Especially not with granite slabs the size of truck hoods, shaped and fitted with such care. And then there's the light. Once a year on the summer solstice, the setting sun lines up perfectly with the entrance tunnel. The last rays of daylight stretch down the passage and land right on the back wall of the chamber like a spotlight from another world. Now ask yourself, why would a colonial farmer go through the trouble of aligning a vegetable cellar with a celestial event? This is where things get strange. The Upton Chamber isn't the only structure of its kind. There are other stone chambers scattered across New England, in Vermont, New Hampshire, even Connecticut. But this one, it's the largest, the most complete, and by far the most mysterious. That's led to a lot of theories. Some believe the chamber was built by native peoples long before Europeans arrived, used for ceremony or sky watching. Others think it goes even further back, that it's proof of pre-Columbian visitors, maybe Celts, maybe Norse, maybe even a forgotten culture that once crossed the Atlantic and left behind this stone fingerprint in a Massachusetts dirt. It sounds impossible until you're standing inside it. The design feels deliberate. The stones haven't budged. The roof hasn't collapsed. And that tunnel doesn't bend or curve. It points like it was meant to track something or invite something. There are whispers, too. Not actual voices, but stories. Strange sensations. Visitors who say they felt dizzy or like time slipped sideways for just a moment. Cameras that glitch. Compass needles that spin. Some people report a low hum inside the chamber. A sound you don't hear so much as feel in your chest. Others believe it goes even deeper, that tunnels once led farther into the hillside, that the chamber was just the front door to something bigger, something now buried or collapsed. Over the years, amateur archaeologists have tried to trace those paths. Dowsers have mapped energy lines, and sound experts have studied the acoustics, claiming the chamber creates strange echoes, standing waves, even vibrations. Was it a temple, a meditation space, a calendar in stone, or something else entirely? Modern archaeology doesn't offer many answers. Official records still call it a root cellar, but that explanation feels more like a placeholder than a conclusion. Because here's the thing, there are no records of it being built, no colonial mentions, no town documents, no stories passed down. Which means the chamber didn't just get forgotten over time. It was already forgotten when the settlers arrived. Today, the Upton Chamber sits tucked behind a tree inn, just a short walk from neighborhood homes and town buildings. There's a small trail leading to it. No ticket booth, no gift shop, just a few steps off the beaten path, and you're standing at its door. And the closer you get, the more it starts to feel like something sacred or ancient or both. It doesn't try to impress you. It doesn't brag. It just exists, quiet, mysterious, and impossibly old. Like it's waiting for something or someone. Maybe it's just a chamber. Or maybe it's a message, a monument to a chapter of human history we've lost or were never meant to find. Because if something like this can sit hidden in a Massachusetts hillside for 1,000 years, unchanged, untouched, and still perfectly aligned with the sun, then what else is out there? What else have we missed? Today, the town of Upton hums along. Kids ride bikes. Lawns get mowed. The world moves forward. But under the surface, beneath the hills and trees, the chamber waits, watching the sky, marking time, holding on to a secret that might outlast us all. Whatever it was built for, it's not finished yet. That Rehoboth is on rock. Sometimes an owl in rock history doesn't whisper from beneath the ground or hide inside strange stone carvings. Sometimes it stands in the open, massive, immovable, and dares you to ignore it. Just outside the small town of Rehoboth, Massachusetts, there is a place like that. A granite outcrop, rising from the woods like the exposed spine of the earth. Rough, ancient, and scarred. The locals call it on rock. At first glance, it looks like just another boulder, one of many scattered through New England. But this one holds a story, a brutal, unresolved chapter in America's early history. And once you know what happened here, you'll never look at it the same way again. Let's rewind. It's the summer of 1676. The colonies are on fire, caught in the final blood-soaked days of King Philip's War, one of the deadliest conflicts per capita in American history. Native tribes across New England had united under the Wampanoag leader, Metacomcled King Philip, by the English to resist colonial expansion. What followed was a savage war that devastated both sides. By August, Metacom had already been killed, shot, and beheaded near Mount Hope. But one of his top warriors, Anawan, an elderly Sachem and trusted captain, was still out there, still resisting, still a symbol of defiance. That brings us to this rock. Here, beneath its looming face and among the trees, Anawan and his band of followers were encamped, exhausted, hunted, and unaware that their time was running out. That on August 28th, Captain Benjamin Church, a colonial ranger who had spent the war adapting native tactics against native people, tracked Anawan's group to this spot. Under the cover of night, Church and his men crept through the forest, climbed the rocks silently, and surrounded the camp. And Awan, realizing the fight was over, surrendered without bloodshed. He offered Church his ceremonial headdress, a sacred item rich with spiritual meaning, as a gesture of peace and honor. Church in turn promised mercy, promised that Anawan would be spared. But the colonial authorities had other plans. Shortly after his capture, Anawan was executed. No trial, no clemency, just another silencing of a leader who refused to bow. And that's where the mystery begins, because something changed after that night. Over years, visitors to Anawan Rock have reported strange phenomena. Whispers echoing across the stone when no one else is around. The sound of drums, soft, rhythmic, carried on still air. People describe a presence here, especially at dusk. Not angry, not violent, but watchful waiting. Others have seen flickering lights near the rock, like phantom campfires glowing for just a second before vanishing. A few have even claimed to see shadowy figures moving along the tree, glimpses of warriors who aren't quite gone. And always there's the feeling, a heaviness, not oppressive, but undeniable, like the rock itself remembers what happened, like it refuses to let the story fade. Some believe the site is cursed, not in a horror movie sense, but spiritually unsettled. That the betrayal of Anawan disrupted a sacred balance, that his surrender, his trust was broken here, and the land has carried the weight ever since. Others see it as hallowed ground, not haunted, but honored, a place where memory gathers and refuses to be erased. After all, Anawan wasn't just a warrior. He was one of the last living links to a way of life that colonization tried to destroy. His capture marked the official end of King Philip's War, but not the end of the story. Because the rock is still here, and it's not hidden. You can walk right up to it. There's a small sign, a few trees, birds calling in the distance. It feels like any other patch of woods until you're standing in front of it. Then suddenly everything gets quieter. The light shifts, and something ancient begins to press in at the edges of your senses. It's not imagination, that it's history pressing through the cracks. Over time, Anawan Rock has become a site of pilgrimage, not in the religious sense, but in the emotional one. People come here to feel something, to stand where it happened, to touch the stone and wonder how a moment so quiet could carry so much weight. The rock doesn't speak, but it holds the silence like a memory, a boundary stone between what was and what came after. Today, Rayboth is a peaceful town. Colonial homes, quiet streets, kids on bicycles. But deep in the trees, this one rock still watches, still remembers. It's not about ghosts or glowing orbs. It's about truth. A moment frozen in stone and a name. A no one that refuses to disappear. Because sometimes the land isn't just remember, it won't let you forget. Dungeon Rock. Hidden in the tangled woods of Lynn, Massachusetts. In a park better known for its scenic overlooks than its secrets, there lies a hole in the earth that has consumed entire lives. It's not just a cave. It's a scar, a monument to obsession, and a symbol of how far one man would go to chase a ghost. They call it Dungeon Rock. It begins with a pirate. The year was 1658. A great storm came crashing onto the coast of Lynn, ripping trees from their roots, flooding lowlands, and smashing ships against the rocks. But in the wake of that chaos, locals reported something stranger than felled oaks and washed-out roads. The sudden appearance of a lone pirate dragging a heavy chest into the forest. He was the last survivor of a crew that had sailed with Captain Thomas Ville, one of the many privateers turned pirates who haunted the Atlantic in the 17th century. V had fled inland, hoping to stash his treasure and vanish from the reach of colonial justice. He was seen hauling it into a cave deep in the SUS woods, and then the earth swallowed him whole. An earthquake rare in Massachusetts, but not impossible, struck shortly after. The cave collapsed, the entrance sealed. The pirate and his gold vanished in a legend, buried under tons of unforgiving granite. For nearly 2 centuries, the story remained just that. A tale told around fires passed from father to son that a lost pirate, a hidden fortune, a cave that no longer opened. But then came Hiram Marble. In the mid-1800s, Marble bought a section of land in what's now Lynn Woods Reservation, claiming he had been contacted by the ghost of the pirate himself, the long-dead Captain V. According to Marble, the spirit revealed the exact location of the treasure. Not only that, the ghost urged him to dig it out to finish what fate had cut short. Most people would have laughed and moved on. But Marble wasn't most people. He began to dig, with nothing more than hand tools, dynamite, and sheer stubborn will. Hiram Marble, joined later by his son Edwin, spent the rest of his life tunneling through solid stone. They carved a literal dungeon into the bedrock, a winding, descending tunnel that spiraled ever downward toward where they believed the treasure lay in. For decades, they chipped away, blasting, hauling debris, reinforcing the walls with iron and brick, even charging admission to curious visitors to help fund their labor. They never found the gold. Not a coin, not a bone, not a scrap of pirate cloth. And yet, the digging didn't stop. Even after Hiram died, Edwin carried on, consumed by the same vision, driven, some say, by something more than belief, as if the cave itself had its hooks in him. And that's where Dungeon Rock crosses from strange into unsettling. Visitors who enter the chamber today, yes, you can still go inside, often speak of the atmosphere. It's not just dark, it's thick. The air feels heavier than it should. The temperature drops in ways no surface cave should allow. Some report hearing strange tapping sounds, echoes that don't match footfalls. Others have said they hear whispering, low and rhythmic like words spoken underwater. There are stories, too, of people emerging from the cave feeling off, like they left a piece of themselves behind. Others have gotten lost, even though the chamber is relatively small and mapped. Something about the place disorients, scrambles your sense of time and distance. A 10-minute visit can feel like an hour or 5 minutes. No one agrees. And then there's the feeling, the one that creeps in about halfway down the tunnel. You're not alone. Some chalk it up to suggestion. The power of legend and a spooky place playing tricks on the brain. But there are too many stories, too many identical experiences from people who never knew the legend. People who just felt something shift the moment they stepped past the iron door. The deeper mystery isn't even the treasure. It's the obsession. What possessed Hiram Marble to dedicate his life, his entire fortune, to a voice from beyond? What kept Edwin chipping away in solitude long after public interest faded? And what kind of place pulls men into stone and refuses to let them go? Dungeon Rock, for all its strange, is built on a true story. There was a pirate. There was a collapse. Hum did spend decades digging. These aren't ghost stories whispered in the dark. They're documented facts. But what lies beneath that reality is something else entirely. Could the cave be more than a cave? Some have proposed that Dungeon Rock sits at the center of a natural fault line where magnetic forces run wild and psychic phenomena are amplified. Others believe it's a gateway, a thin place where the barrier between worlds weakens, a place that calls to people, lures them in, promises gold or answers or immortality, and give them something else. And if that sounds far-fetched, remember this. Hiram wasn't the first person drawn to that stone, and he probably won't be the last. Today, Dungeon Rock is part of Lynn Woods Reservation, a public park full of trails and quiet forest. Families hike there. Dogs chase sticks. Cyclists roll by on paved loops. But off one path, behind an iron gate embedded in a cliffside, the tunnel remains. You can still go in if you're willing to duck your head and brave the cold. Bring a flashlight. Watch your footing. Listen closely. And when you reach the end of the tunnel where the Marble's quest finally gave out, ask yourself what you feel, not what you think, what you feel. Because Dungeon Rock doesn't speak in language. It speaks in silence, in darkness, in pressure against your chest, and thoughts you didn't mean to have. There may be no treasure, no skeleton in a pirate's coat, but there's something in that cave, something waiting, something ancient, something that still remembers Captain V and the man who followed him down. And it might just be calling someone new,